In life, there's three things that I love: cereal, free refills, and these players at ADP. Let's go. For starters, let's talk about Johnathan Taylor. Johnathan Taylor had a decent year last year, even though he only played a handful of games. He played a little more than half the season. He started slow the first few games, and the offense was able to work him in because of the resurgence of Zach Moss. But by the end of the season, you could tell that he was fully back. In 2023, in 10 games, he had 169 attempts, 741 yards, 7 touchdowns, and averaged a little over 74 yards per game. In those 10 games, he had 23 targets, 19 receptions, added about 150 yards receiving, and a touchdown. He only played 10 games, but if you extrapolate that for a 17-game season on a 17-game pace, he would have had about 287 attempts on the ground, about 1,260 yards rushing, and almost 12 touchdowns. Now, I don't want to average out a 17-game pace in the receiving game because, listen, he never played with Anthony Richardson, so it's hard to say what his receiving totals could have been. One thing I will say, though, is Johnathan Taylor is an old-school running back. He's a type of running back that you can turn around and hand the ball off to 20 to 25 carries a game. And you can say that he's not going to give you too much on the receiving end, which I agree to a little extent. With the Russian quarterback, they tend to run the ball instead of going for a check down. But he does have that capability of being a receiving back. Let's not forget, the year that he was number 1 running back in fantasy football, he had about 50 receptions. This is going to be a top 10, if not top 5 rushing offense in the NFL, right up there with the likes of Baltimore and San Francisco. PFF rated this line number 3 going into the 24 season. The coaching staff wants to maximize Anthony Richardson. They don't want him running the ball 15 to 20 times a game. They've obviously seen what he can do athletically, but they've also seen how quickly he can come out of the game because of one simple hit. His rookie season was cut short because of injuries. They don't want that to be a reoccurring issue. So what is a quarterback's best friend? His running back. And that's what they have Johnathan Taylor for. Towards the second half of the season, he was starting to get back into form, and he started to remind people why he's a top 10 running back in this league. And even with Zach Moss, he actually was a pretty good running back, but without Zach Moss, he was even better. In the games he played with Zach Moss, he averaged about 17 carries a game. Without Zach Moss, so from weeks 11 to 17, the last 5 to 6 games of the season, he averaged 23 carries a game. There's not many running backs in the NFL that's going to give you that. He's easily a candidate for 20 to 25 attempts on a week-to-week basis. Johnathan Taylor has the ability to finish number 1, like we said, even though he's not going to get the receiving because of the rushing totals of Anthony Richardson. We have to look at Johnathan Taylor like a new age Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry gets drafted, obviously not this year. He gets drafted in the first round every year, regardless of his receiving totals, because they know he's going to give you between 1,500 and 2,000 yards rushing, double-digit touchdowns. He's going to sprinkle in a little receiving, but that's just a cherry on top. We have to look at Johnathan Taylor as a new age Derrick Henry. Speaking of Derrick Henry, King Henry is next on my list of players that I love at his current ADP. I really don't understand why Derrick Henry is getting pushed further and further down the ADP ranks. Every aspect of the offense has gotten better around him. He's playing with a much better quarterback, a much better offensive line, a much better coaching staff, offensive oriented, a team that loves to run the ball. So why is his ADP plummeting? Beats me. But I'm going to take him every single time. We're talking about an offense that saw Gus Edwards have 13 touchdowns last year and average over 4 yards a attempt. Imagine what Derrick Henry could do in this offense. Even at this stage in his career, he is much better than the Gus bus. And the good thing about Derrick Henry is in Tennessee, they loaded the boxes constantly because they knew Ryan Tannehill, or at the end of his career, Will Levis, would not be able to get the ball out to the receivers. And they knew that Derrick Henry was the main focus of the offense. You stop Derrick Henry, you stop Tennessee Titans. That's not going to be the case in Baltimore, and that's going to work in his favor. I've said it in previous videos. I do think that Derrick Henry has the best odds to lead the NFL in touchdowns this year. Now, if you look at sports books, he's actually second behind CMC. But again, I'm asking to take into consideration, receiving totals and all that. But I do think that Derrick Henry has a very high chance on leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns this year. This is actually the first time in recent memory that I can think of that he slips past the first round. On average, he's going, depending on your drafts and depending on your league settings, between the second and third round, late second, early third. And again, at that ADP, I will scoop him up every single time. To get King Henry as your second, maybe even your third running back, That's insane to me. You're taking one of the NFL's leading rushers and putting him into the #1 rushing offense in the NFL. There's not many statistics I can give you that's better than that. Buy the dip. I promise you, you will not be sorry. Speaking of buying the dip, let's talk about Taylor Swift's boyfriend, Travis Kelce. Just like Derrick Henry, for the first time in as many years as I can remember, Travis Kelce is slipping past the first round. You no longer have to decide between your #1 running back or your #1 receiver or Travis Kelce. Usually he'll go between the 5 to 9 range in fantasy drafts. And of course, you're getting a bargain at the tight end position, but you do have to choose between him and one of your premium positions. This year, that's not the case. This year, he's slipping to the 3rd round with the likes of Sam Laporta. I don't know about you, but if I'm in the 3rd round and I have to choose between Travis Kelce and Sam Laporta, give me Travis Kelce every single time. How good is Travis Kelce? In a down year, he finished top 3 in all tight end major categories: yards, touchdowns, targets, and receptions. And he never killed you. Yes, he might not have finished as a tight end 1 where you drafted him at, and he did hurt you last year, which does have some stank on his name and making people hesitate to draft him this year. They think he's getting too old, and they think he can't do it anymore. The Kansas City offense is going to have some resurgence. We've seen what he did in the playoffs, so we can't say, oh, he's getting old, he's decrepit, he's no longer, a top tight end. We've seen what he did in the playoffs. If he could do it all season long, he would jump right back into that conversation for tight end 1. And in my opinion, he really should have never left. Let's look at some of the top tight ends. Sam Laporta, yes, he's good, but can he repeat? He had an outstanding rookie season, but we need to see it. We need to see more of him. George Kittle is very inconsistent and oftentimes hurt. Can Mark Andrews sustain that high efficiency in a rushing offense, but being the leading receiver? We'll see. Hawkinson downgraded at quarterback. He's either going to get a rookie quarterback or he's going to get Sam Darnold, which probably isn't too much better. Kyle Pitts and Trey McBride, who I love this year in fantasy football, I have those guys as top 4 tight ends. But at the same time, we're basing it all off potential. We need to see it. So it's really safe to say that Kelce is really only a safe bet at the tight end position. He's one of the only guys that you can set it and forget it. Unlike guys like TJ Hawkinson that we're not really sure of his quarterback play, Travis Kelce is still catching the ball from Patrick Mahomes. That's all I need to say about that. As much as we love the new weapons in Kansas City, again, they're going to have a resurgence in their offense. At the same time, we need to see it. Hollywood, who has a lot of potential, but he's never really had that breakout season, and he is often hurt. Rashee Rice, what's going to happen with him in suspension? Xavier Worthy as a rookie. Kadarius Toney, he's pretty much one drop away from being cut at this point. Kelce is still the main read and the #1 look in the offense, especially in the red zone. And as a tight end, that's where it counts. Now, last but not least, let's talk about a 4th round value, who's probably one of my favorites this year, and I seem to be picking him up in every single mock draft. Let's talk about James Cook. James Cook finished 4th in rushing in the NFL last year, while finishing 10th in attempts, which means he was very efficient with his touches. Joe Brady is used to using great running backs and getting the most out of them at their position. Clyde Edwards at LSU, CMC in Carolina, Alvin Kamara with the Saints. He knows how to use a really good running back. And James Cook is no different. I think he's going to benefit from the new offensive coordinator at Buffalo. Buffalo's also among the NFL leaders in vacated targets with the likes of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. They have a lot of targets up for grabs. Yes, we want to see what Dalton Kincaid can do and Dawson Knox and their new fleet of wide receivers. But James Cook is the mainstay in that offense and one of the guys that Josh Allen trusts. We know that for sure. From weeks 11 to 17, James Cook averaged 20 opportunities a game between carries and targets. And that was the second half of the season. Is that something that Buffalo is going to build up for next year? We hope so. And if they do, James Cook could finish as a top 5 running back, no questions asked. We also have to remember that Buffalo gave about 100 attempts to the likes of Damian Harris and Latavius Murray. About halfway through the season, James Cook took over that role and never looked back. So I'm excited to see what a full season in a workhorse role does for James Cook. Yes, he lost a lot of his main pieces in the offense, but it's still going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL as long as they have Josh Allen. And obviously you want the starting running back for one of the best offenses in the NFL. It's very good for fantasy football. It's going to steal a lot of the red zone touchdowns, but there was only really a handful of touchdowns that he finished in the red zone. There's really no way that James Cook should continue to fall to the 4th round, but if he stays where he's at in draft season, make sure to scoop him up every single time. Scoop him up every single time like a ground ball. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in and following along with us on this journey to become the #1 fantasy football company in the state of Louisiana.